Welcome back. I'm Jack Bradley. A U.S. bomber fleet in Missouri reportedly shares a fence with a trailer park that's linked to Chinese intelligence. That's according to a Daily Caller report, which says that the CCP used multiple shell companies to conceal its identity. So when B-2 bombers take off, they go over CCP-owned land. To discuss, let's bring on Glenn Ignazio. He's a retired Air Force Special Operations Commander and national security expert. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. First off, how concerning is this? Because this is just one of many cases of land owned by Chinese nationals near sensitive U.S. military bases.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's rather significant around the entire country, seeing a lot of these territories right next to significant and very critical military bases being bought up and occupied by Chinese businesses. But when you mentioned there's shadow companies, or excuse me, shell companies, that's saying that there's some malicious intent. And the reason for it, and not to be some kind of conspiracy theorist or anything, but the reality is when this is right next to a facility like Whiteman, where the B-2 bombers are located, that's a very strategic resource where if anything was to happen overseas, say with China, regardless if it's Taiwan or anything, these are critical bombers that would be part of an operation like that.
Very interesting. And several members of Congress are looking to stop this by pushing for bills to ban nationals from adversarial countries like China from owning land in the U.S. Even if something like this is passed, though, would it be enough considering how much land is already owned by them?
Yeah, I think going forward is one thing, but the problem is if you look in the past of what's already been done, that's one of the problems of what can be particularly done for situations like this. So a lot of these things have been overlooked. And again, for having an area or a facility similar to what we're talking about at Whiteman, again, to be realistic in this, and you saw things like this in Ukraine, it does not take much. It could take a trailer loaded with drones to fly over and do something very deadly to a military base. That's the reality of today with drone warfare. So when you have a facility like this, that close, and if you look at every one of the nuclear missile bases and strategic bases that are critical for U.S. national security, there is a China-based territory that has been bought and owned within the United States right next door. So there is definitely a problematic situation that has to be dealt with.
It's a very tricky situation, too. But I want to move on to Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying this. He's saying that President Trump's call to resume nuclear testing is needed, giving ongoing testing by U.S. adversaries like China, with the biggest buildup in the military right now. Now, we're going to roll a clip of Rubio right after meeting with G7 leaders in Canada from last night.
Trump's pledge to resume testing of our nuclear capabilities, that includes delivery systems, is on par with what other countries around the world are doing. We've got to make sure these things work and that they're safe.
Glenn, should the U.S. continue nuclear testing?
That's where we have to delineate exactly what nuclear testing means. Okay, so if nuclear testing means our particular weapons and doing nuclear explosions underground like we did years ago, that's problematic because it opens the doors to many. I think Korea was the last one to test an actually nuclear weapon, and it opens the door for others, India, Pakistan, Russia, everybody to start again. However, when we're talking about nuclear capabilities, we're talking about our ICBM tests. We just did one just this past week out of Vandenberg Air Force Base or Space Force Base. We do that all the time. You see Russia that has now launched a cruise missile that is nuclear powered. Now that is something that's very interesting because it doesn't run out of power if it's launched and successful. So a lot of these facilities, North Korea and many other countries, are launching the methods or at least the platforms that can carry nuclear weapons. But not testing nuclear weapons is really what we need to draw the line at. So again, testing the capabilities to make sure they work, right. Nuclear weapons and nuclear explosions, whole different beast. And I don't think we want to open that both in the United States or worldwide.
And lastly, let's look at an active war. The European Union wants to fund Ukraine using frozen Russian assets. This would be given to Ukraine as a loan. Ukraine would have to pay this back if Russia pays reparations to Ukraine. What impact would this have on the war?
Well, I think that one of the things that would be interesting, of course, is there's a lot of legalities as far as what is those particular items from Russia going to help in Ukraine and so forth. So we won't get into the legalities part. But when we look at what is going on between Ukraine and Russia, the real limitation right now is actually the soldiers. So you can have the weapons from the EU or from the United States, and Russia has the same, and they can just completely keep on bombing each other. But it's the territory and the territory that's hold that's going to matter. That's where they keep on negotiating in Ukraine. But Russia keeps on throwing people into the gauntlet there, and they keep on, unfortunately, getting killed. And the same thing with Ukraine to defend. But Ukraine is running out of its most important resource, which are soldiers. That, what I believe, is the key to this war and this conflict ending. Whereas the weapons, they may help in particular tactical events, but it's not going to win the war. And that's what's going to be the problem between the two countries.
All right, we'll see as we go into winter here. Glenn Ignazio, thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care.